Welcome to Crossing Faiths. I'm John Pinna, and today we have an interesting guest. These are the type of conversations that I love. We're going to be talking about the end of days with Joseph Dumond, who's an author and a scholar and a subject matter expert on what we call the Jubilee calendar. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can say that.
Jubilee calendar, which is the sort of the sort of phases towards the end of days. And so we're going to be talking about how this works, and we get a lot of questions about the end of days and prophecy and prophetic sort of prophetic steps towards the apocalypse or end days. And so we asked Mr. Dumond on to chat about it. So thank you for being on.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor. It's a great honor just to get to know you too. So thank you. Yeah, I'm excited.
I appreciate you taking the time. So here we are. Let's just talk about first. We'll go backwards to go forward. So, all right, the end of days are significant in the Abrahamic faiths, and so there's differing opinions on the end of days, and so right on what it is. And whether it's coming. So maybe you could just unpack for a little bit of, like, first of all, I sort of depicted you as an expert at the end of days. You know, why would you want to be an expert in the end of days? Why do you, what's the big deal?
I didn't want to be an expert on the end of the day. I didn't want to teach. I didn't want to be a teacher. I didn't want to be a Bible scholar, if you can call me that. I just wanted to. My question was, why would God give you a commandment in Leviticus 25 to keep the sabbatical and Jubilee years, the Shemitah and the Yovel in Hebrew, and not tell you when they are? So right. I would ask my pastors, when is it? And nobody knew. I said, well, then how do you obey it? Nobody knew. And I said, well, then if you're not obeying it, aren't you sinning? Nobody would answer that one. So that went on for a long time. And then in 2005, this answer came to me. Some people say I got a big download of information. All of a sudden I just started to understand when it was. I had discovered somebody else had done some research on it, and they provided proof for 11 artifacts that I was able to document and reprove with their help. And then I connected that to the Old Testament, and then by doing that, bridging the Old Testament to a modern day calendar, that led me to understand where we are in that time chronology. So again, Genesis 6:3, I'm not going to argue with man forever. I'm paraphrasing it here. I'm not going to argue with man forever. He's got 120 years. Well, nobody lives to be 120 years, right. Not on average. So the word years in Hebrew is shana, and that one of the meanings, so Hebrew words have multiple meanings. So that one word shana means cycles of time. Yeah. I'm going to give man 120 cycles of time. Was that Jubilee cycles? So yeah, everyone knows that there's 6,000 years. Everyone believes that there's 120 Jubilees. Okay, 6 cycles of time, 120 Jubilees. Okay, that's 6 millennial days. Yeah, that all makes sense. But how do you connect Genesis to the Gregorian calendar that we use today? That was the trick. So I had to figure that out. And once I did, then because, I was just a guy sitting in a pew, who am I to know this? How come my pastor doesn't know this? Then I tried to tell him, and because I was the guy in the pew, he wouldn't listen. So, but I couldn't disprove what I'd understood. I couldn't prove what I was seeing false. And the more I tried to disprove it, the more proofs I found to make it real. So there's 120 Jubilee cycles. Then the next question you have to answer is, did you count by 50 or do you count by 49s? And this was the big debate. And it was even the big debate amongst the sages who are recorded in the Mishnah. And Rabbi Judah, said that there's a Jubilee cycle was 49 years, with the 50th year being the first year. But he got outvoted by the other rabbis, and so they went with 50-year Jubilee cycles. And they brought that forward in the Mishnah, and that's how come our chronology is so messed up today. That's part of the reason. So which one's right? You have to prove it. Like, I have to prove everything. Your opinion, my opinion, their opinion, I don't care. Give me the facts, prove it. If I can take this to the Supreme Court and lay it before the judges and prove it to them, then I have a case. So that's what I do with all my teachings, all my understanding. I have to be able to take it to the Supreme Court and prove it there. So how would you prove whether it's 49 or 50?
Right.
You have to find other Jubilee years recorded in history. So the one that I had in 2005 was 2 Kings 1929. That's the very first proof that I was given of a Jubilee year. So 2 Kings 1929 says, so the Assyrians are attacking Hezekiah. They've got Jerusalem surrounded. There's 180,000 plus men there. And I can't say the guy's name, I can't say his name. He's telling everyone in Jerusalem to give up. You know, the Assyrians are going to destroy you, kill you. Your God can't save you. And Hezekiah goes before God in the temple and prays. He brings the letter and prays. And Isaiah comes back with an answer. So this is 2 Kings 1929. I believe it's Isaiah 32, and it's also recorded in 2 Chronicles 32, I think. I can't remember scripture and verses, so just don't hold me to that. But God says in 2 Kings 1929, this year, the year that this is taking place, in this year, you shall eat what grows of itself, which means that you don't plant. Next year, so Hezekiah thinks he's about to die. And he's asking God, what do I do? And God's giving him that, instead of God saying, I'll take care of it, don't worry about it, they're all going to be dead in the morning. No, God gives him this cryptic clue. This year you shall eat what grows of itself. Next year you shall eat what grows of the same. And in the third year, plant and sow and harvest. So you can plant and sow and harvest, but you couldn't do that in these 2 years. God's message was not to Hezekiah. God's message was to us today, because he knew that this time would be lost. So that was for us. But not only that, so
are you saying that marks a specific year, in that, like, the year of the sacking of Jerusalem by the Assyrians means it's the year that something starts?
Yeah, well, it's not the year something starts. It's a epoch. You know what an epoch is? It's a time that you can start counting from. It's a big event.
Right. Yeah, it marks the time of, like, the Jubilee, either beginning or end, or in the middle, or something like that. Is that what you're saying?
So Christianity has used the birth of Jesus as an epoch. They believe that was zero. It was actually before that, but they believe it was zero. So an epoch is the start of this event. So this event is an epoch that we can use to figure things out from.
To mark time. Yeah, I'm just, for our listeners, I'm just making sure that I can, so we're marking time with this sacking of Jerusalem, just like we mark time with the birth of Jesus.
But it wasn't sacked. So the Assyrians, so first of all, he's given you a sabbatical year when you don't plant and harvest, Leviticus 25, a sabbatical year when you don't plant and harvest, and another sabbatical year when you don't plant and harvest. And the only time that you have 2 sabbatical years back to back is when you have a 49th and a 50th year. Okay? That's simple. Everyone, you can understand that. Okay. Sennacherib, the general or the leader who's attacking Jerusalem, he's off fighting Lachish. He's also fighting the armies of Cush and Egypt, and he's defeating them. He's now coming back to take over Jerusalem. Hezekiah makes the prayer. It's during Passover. The next day, I think it was Passover day, I believe it was, 180,000 Assyrians are dead. They died overnight. Sennacherib takes whatever's left, and they march back to Assyria, and he records on a stele or stele. I forget, stele or stele. It's a little stone pyramid that he recorded the battle, and he said that he captured these people. He took money from these people, and from Hezekiah, he caged him up like a bird in a cage. That's also said in the Bible, but it's written on the stele. And he gives the year. Those years that he gives are called Limu and Emu, E-M-M-U, L-I-M-M-U, L-I-M-M-U, yeah. So the Limu and Emu lists. These are the years that they recorded major events. So we have, so like President Trump, we would record this year that President Trump became in the office at the Trump year. Last year would be recorded as the Biden year. The year before that would be recorded, and I don't know, say Hillary year. And we gave a big dignitary the name of the year.
Right.
And that's how they recorded time, according to these dignitaries. Well, one of the dignitaries they recorded the time for, they said that also at this time there was a complete solar eclipse over top of Nineveh. And with that information, they were able to go and record or check when all the solar eclipse happened over Nineveh. And they discovered that that year and the eclipse year lined up. And from that, they began to do the chronology of the Assyrian kings. With that information now, we know exactly what year Sennacherib came against Hezekiah. That was 701 BC. So now we have 701 BC, and the Assyrian chronology, I think it's about 900 years, is able to be matched with Ptolemy's chronology. And then his chronology is brought into the Roman chronology down to the Gregorian chronology that we have today. So that's how we record time in history. But this date of 701 BC is now documented by the Assyrians. That's the year of the sabbatical year, the 49th year.
49th.
The next year
It's
of
50.
700 is the Jubilee year.
Right.
We now got a concrete date given to us from God. This date is in the Bible, it's from God. That's God's message to Hezekiah. So it's coming right from him. And he's recording it for us. Now, you can count from 701 BC, you can count every 7 years going forward and backward in time, and you should land on every sabbatical year throughout history. We had at that time 10 sabbatical years that were known. And when you count by 7, every one of those known sabbatical years lined up with 701 BC. Okay? If you counted from 700 BC and counted by 50, and you went forward to try and line up those same sabbatical years, they didn't work. So that gave you a clue that if you count by 50, it doesn't work. But if you count by 7s or 49s, all of them work. Okay.
So it's all aligned.
Okay, so that, but that's like 90% provable. I want 100%. Leviticus 25:2. It says, when you come into the land shall have a rest. So the year that Israel crossed the Jordan River and entered the promised land, the land was to be having a Jubilee year is what it is. Rabbi Judah also said the same thing, that the year they entered the promised land was a Jubilee year. How do you prove that? Well, you got to do the chronology from Exodus or from Genesis all the way up to when they crossed into the promised land. So when I do that, I end up with the year 2500 after the creation of Adam. 2,500 years, that's a Jubilee year. This is all technical, and I apologize, but it is what it is.
Right.
We got to prove the Jubilee year so that we know where we are. So the year they enter the promised land, 2,500 years after the creation of Adam, that Jubilee year has got to match up and align with the 2 Kings 19 Jubilee year. Once you do that, you can now count from Adam 120 Jubilee years, which will bring us to the Jubilee cycle that we are in right now. So all that to tell you, right now we're in the 120th Jubilee year since the creation of Adam. That Jubilee began in 1996. The next Jubilee year is 2045, which means that 2045 will begin the 7th millennium. So in the Bible, that's the 7th millennium of rest.
Right.
Okay. So now That's just one methodology of proving it, but there's more. You ready for more? You okay
No,
with that so far?
I know. So what basically you're saying, so you have specific dates that you can verify that start these Jubilee cycles, right? That verify the Jubilee year and the cycles, and the cycles progress to 120 to where we are now. And you're saying that in 45, that's the end of this last cycle,
That's the end of the sixth millennial day.
the sixth millennial
So
day, which means
each millennial day is
and,
made up of 20 Jubilee cycles.
right. What's the significance of that?
Okay, so that's the seventh millennium of rest.
Right.
Okay, so that's the one where it says in Isaiah about the lion shall lie down with the wolf, and the child will stick his hand in the adders and not get hurt, and everyone's gonna be peaceful and happy, and and it's gonna be the Messianic age.
Right.
That's what Christians, Jews, and Muslims are all looking forward
We're
to.
all waiting for this to happen. Yeah, we're all trying
That's
to
right.
get the answer. So, and you have the answer.
I've got the answer, and we're coming to that in 2045.
Okay, so 2045, 2044, it's 2044.
2044 is the 49th year. 2045 will be the Jubilee year.
So 2044, we're all here, and so it's just going to be a normal year.
No.
Well, that's what I'm asking. So
No. So I was about to say there's a huge but with a capital B quotation marks before that, right?
Yeah.
So Jesus said, unless those days were cut short, no flesh would be saved alive. Nobody.
Right.
Okay, so we're in the age of nuclear bombs and stuff, and we hear Iran's trying to develop a nuclear bomb. Russia's threatening to shoot a nuclear bomb. The United States has already launched 2 nuclear bombs on Japan in World War II. We're at that time when no flesh can survive.
Right.
Everybody knows that. So unless those days were cut short, no flesh would be saved alive. So how short are those days going to be cut? Again, where's the answer? So now, if you're ready, we got to back up and go to someplace else. And I'm maybe getting too technical, but you tell me if I am or not.
No, it's okay. We got there. We got how you verify the dates and then verify that we're in the last cycle, right? Towards and of course 2044 is not going to be a normal year. So we got to the point where we are able to figure out how time is marked so that you verify that we are in the last cycle and in the end of days.
Yeah. So I have on my website a book called The Stones Cry Out.
Right.
The Stones Cry Out, Part 1, Part 2. I'm giving those away for free. All your listeners can go to my website. They can get those 2 books for free. And I explain all this in much more detail.
Right.
So right now, I told you I had 11 when I first started. Then I found the Leviticus 25:2. Then there's the Bar Kokhba revolt, which, Rabbi Akiva said that Simon Bar Kokhba was the Messiah. And he said that because of the Jubilee year that was coming in 133 AD.
Right.
Or 134, I forget, whatever it is. That also lined up and matched 2 Kings 19. It also matched Leviticus. Then at the south end of the Dead Sea, in a Jewish settlement there called Zoar, I've got 100 tombstones. On those tombstones, of 42 of them are readable. And those 42 give you a date according to when the temple was destroyed in 70 AD. And they tell you the sabbatical year that they are in when they died. And 2 of those tombstones also refer to a Jubilee year. And so those 2 tombstones, the Bar Kokhba revolt, 2 Kings 19:29, and Leviticus 25:2, that gives me 5 Jubilee years that I can now line up, and they all match. The other tombstones give me sabbatical years. So in total, that's 63 sabbatical years, 5 Jubilee years. They all line up, they all sync together, and they prove that this understanding is correct. Counting by 7s and 49s, it matches. So the weekly Sabbath represents the 7th millennium. We're at the end of the 6th day, where it's the Friday afternoon preparing for Sabbath. The getting the meals ready, getting panic, make sure the house is clean, all that stuff that goes on Friday in the Jewish home. That's where we are in the millennial week. We're at the end.
Yeah.
But unless those days are cut short, nobody's going to be saved alive. So what does that mean? Let's go back to Daniel. Daniel is told a prophecy, and he's told in Daniel 9:24-27, he's told that 70 weeks are decreed for your people. Now, most people think that's just the Jewish people. Well, it's not the Jewish people, it's 12 tribes. Daniel's people were 12 tribes, or 13 tribes, and those 13 tribes are his people.
Right.
So this prophecy concerns their longevity, their length of time. 70 weeks. The word weeks, everyone thinks is a 7-day week, but the word weeks in Daniel is written as Shabuah. And the Hebrew word for Shabuah is now I always got to watch out because I've been corrected on a number of times, is the masculine singular of the feminine plural for Shavuot. I hope I got that right. Your Jewish listeners can correct me.
Right.
But the Shavuot is what Daniel was talking about. 70 Shavuot, 70 Shavuot. It's not 70 times 7. A Shavuot is 49 days plus 1. 70 times 7 is 70 times 49, which is 3,430 years. From the going forth of the command. So most Christians assume that that's talking about Cyrus or Xerxes or Ahasuerus in 453, 454, 452, somewhere in BC, that time period, starting with the Persians coming forward. And they do that to bring it up to the crucifixion of Jesus, 483 years, when this mysterious last 7 years, sometimes falling throughout all of history. Well,
Sure.
that theory only started with Julius Africanus in 202 AD. And he thought that ended in 500 because that's what the Septuagint showed him. So they got that wrong, but we continue to use that wrong teaching to this day. It was never about Jesus. Not one of the apostles, not Jesus himself said, look at the Daniel 9 prophecy. See, that's talking about me. Nobody says that. Not one of them. Only the church fathers. Now, the church fathers got that from Rabbi Akiva, and he used that with Rabbi Yossi to prove that Simon Bar Kokhba was the Messiah, and they've changed the dates a little bit. But before him, the Hasmoneans used it to prove that they were who was being spoken about. So you got the Hasmoneans, the Bar Kokhba, and so that's 162 BC, 133 AD, and then you got the church fathers in 202. Starting in 180, 202. And it doesn't prove up, but we still use this to this day, and it's a false teaching. It's not 70 times 7, it's 70 times 49. From the going forth of the command was when Moses was given the command by God to go back to Egypt and get the people. He was told 7 times in Exodus 3 and 4 to go and get the people. And he's got all these excuses. I can't talk, I can't speak right, my tongue doesn't work, and he's got all these excuses. Same ones I tried to use not to teach. I didn't want to do this. I just let me play in my garden, leave me alone.
Right.
But nobody's teaching us, so I had to step up. So from Moses, if you do the chronology, because we've now got this chronology from Genesis to Leviticus when they enter the land, and from Leviticus to 2 Kings 19:29. So you now got the chronology. You got 120 Jubilee cycles, 120 times 49, 5,880 years.
Right.
Okay, that's the time period. So here's the controversial thing. The Exodus takes place in 1379 BC. Not 1450, not 1250, depending on which school you go to. It's 1379.
What happened? So you have all these anchor points to verify the timeline, and to demonstrate what's right and what's wrong. So that's what's happened. And then now
My proofs.
Your proofs. And now we know that in 1370, now what's happening?
1379, Moses, the Exodus takes place from Egypt.
Right.
But in the years before that, I'm saying it's 3 years before that. So 1383, 1382, somewhere in there, we don't know. That's when Moses is at Mount Sinai, right? So, and I told you before, I just come back from Mount Sinai 3 years ago. Awesome trip. You got to go. Really cool. In Saudi Arabia, not the one
Right.
in
Yeah,
Egypt,
it's
in
inside.
Saudi
They
Arabia.
have split stone, and like it's all. I've been out there with that way. There's all this ash on the mountain there. You
Not
know,
ash, it's solid black rock.
yeah, black rock, and then they've got the they've got the golden calf.
Yes,
Uh, that
the
way you got,
hieroglyphs,
yeah, and
petroglyphs.
right, but there's that, but where the what's and there's all these stone things where the settlements were, where like because where all the refugees were. So yeah, no, I've been, I think we talked previously, but before we started recording about, the first episode was Jesus nails, so we're big into relics,
Yeah.
getting to places and seeing things, and I was overjoyed that you had that, the Turks have the staff, the Moses staff that you didn't know, which was great.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
So
so
like again, like I was saying before, I have to prove it. So I went to Noah's Ark to prove the Bible true. I went to Mount Sinai to prove the Exodus true. I had to prove this stuff, and now I know.
right, right.
I know he's real.
So you're on this investigation. You're figuring this out. I'm just kind of repeating I want to repeat back to you what you kind of said.
Yep.
So you figured out that we're using the wrong timeline. There's these, and you have these proofs that demonstrate where exactly the Jubilee years begin and end, right? Cycles.
Yep.
And then you've pinpointed the Exodus, the sign, you've pinpointed when Moses was on Mount Sinai.
Right. So Moses on Mount Sinai, the year is approximately 1380 BC, 1383 BC. And then from that time period, it says in Daniel 9, from the going forth of the command shall be 7 weeks. Now, most Christian apologetics take the 7 weeks, they put that at the end and 62 before, and they do all this mumbo jumbo and the 7 last years of the tribulation. There it is. And Dan, that's not what it says. It says the 7 is first.
Right.
So from the going forth of the command, 7 Jubilee cycles, 7 Shabuah, brings you to the time of Messiah the Prince. That Messiah the Prince was King David.
Okay.
King David was born exactly 343 years after the Mount Sinai in 1040 BC.
Right.
King David's anointed by Samuel as a young shepherd boy. He's anointed by Judah when he's made king over Judah. Then 7 years later in 1003 BC, he's anointed by all of Israel and made king over all of Israel. King David is the anointed prince that is spoken of there. And then it says from there, you count 62 Shabuah. So the total of 69 Shavuot will bring you to 1996. So I have this big 20 by 10 banner, which I showed at the NRB this year. I'll be showing it again next year. And I show people time because, like, if you're listening to us on the radio, this guy's giving me so many numbers, my head's hurting, and you're trying to drive. I get it. But we have this banner, and I show you from the creation of Adam, 120 Jubilee cycles. I count by 49. I have every year on there. You can count every year. And that's the only way that you can see time.
We'll put it in the show notes. We'll put it in the show. You'll see. Yeah.
We have, we have a 2-hour teaching from the NRB that you can see all this stuff.
Yeah. We'll put all the links in. It's not a problem.
Awesome. So that brings us to, if you're looking on the video, right behind me is the last Jubilee cycle we're in now.
Right.
And from 1996 to 2044. Then it says in Daniel 9, the 70th week. In the midst of the 70th Shabuah, in the midst of the 70th week, in the midst of the 70th Jubilee cycle, in the middle. So the middle of that time is the year 2020, which, if you see my charts, I've had that marked since I started doing this back in 2005. Something was going to happen in 2020. And in the midst of the Jubilee cycle, he shall cut off sacrifice and offering. Okay, I just told you that was 2020, but where's the temple? Where's the sacrifice and offering?
Right.
What happened? So what happened in 2020? COVID happened. Every church, every temple, every mosque, every synagogue, every place of worship
Everything
around the
was
world shut down, except for the rebels. They're the only ones that kept going to church or
Right.
whatever they did. But basically, the whole world shut down because of COVID. But that still doesn't answer the temple part. If I've got the 120 Jubilee cycles right, and I got 2020 right, and again, I'm looking for something to happen. I'm not sure exactly what that meant up until 2020, but I knew something was coming. And I even said that if nothing happens in 2020, I'm shutting down my ministry because I got this all wrong. But something big happened, and we all know it. It's not a Joe Dumond sign. It's not my own special little, only I can see it. The whole world saw the whole world being shut down. Whether you agree with it or not, whether you believe in COVID or believe in some conspiracy or the vaccine, I don't care what angle you think it, the whole world shut down in 2020.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Yeah. What is that? Yeah. So where does that mean within this cycle or within?
Okay. Well, it says in Daniel 9, he shall cut off sacrifice and offering.
All right. So it was cut off.
Where's the sacrifice and offering? That's the thing. Where is that? And I'm looking for, there's no temple, there's no sacrifice and offerings. What is he talking about here? On March 25th, 2020, Prime Minister Netanyahu locked down Israel. So in Israel, you need 10 men to have a quorum.
Yeah.
In order to do corporate prayer.
Yeah. Minion.
I mean, everyone can pray, but to have a corporate prayer, you have to go out, and you're not allowed to go out. Netanyahu locked down Israel. He locked down Israel 4 times, but this was the first time.
Right.
What does that mean? So I started to think about it, and throughout the book of Psalms, Hosea 14:2, this is the half Torah portion for I forget what half Torah portion for Shabbat Shuvah during the 10 days of awe. So there's a Sabbath from the Feast of Trumpets to the Day of Atonement. There's a Sabbath that lands there. It's called Shabbat Shuvah. This is the half Torah portion for that day. Return, O Israel, and bring the Torah scrolls with you. So Hosea 14:2 is the bullocks of our lips. The prayers of our lips are the sacrifice and offering. That was shut down in every religion around the world. Is that right? I'm not, when I'm seeing this, I'm not 100% sure, because I'm looking in the mirror and I'm saying, who are you to understand this stuff? You're not a rabbi, you're not a pastor, you're not, not a prophet, you're just Joe Dumond reading his Bible. But there it is, Hosea 14:2, there's Netanyahu shutting down Israel. Okay. There's some other stuff, we'll come back to that, but in Daniel 12, verse 11 and 12, it says, from the time that the daily is taken away until the abomination is set up will be 1,290 days. Okay. So Joe, if you've got this right and you understand this right, then the abomination will be set up in the holy place in Jerusalem 1,290 days later. So I go to Jerusalem on September, 3rd, 4th of September. I work construction. Every construction site, before you set up a statue or anything, there's pre-construction, leveling the ground, grading the ground, pouring the concrete, whatever you got to do to build this thing. I don't know what it is I'm looking for, but it's going to be some type of an abomination. Something to do with the statue. I believed I knew exactly where it was going to be set up on the Mount of Olives, or the Mount of Golgotha. And I'm watching, and they've got a new construction site there. They got a whole bunch of wood. They got the thing half built. And I can't believe it. I've actually found it. So, but my date I was thinking September 22nd, and it's ready by September 22nd, but there's no abomination in it, no statue. Rabbi Yehuda Glick is the head of the Temple Mount Prayer Group. I went to him on September 9th, and I says, they're about to do this abomination thing, and it's going to be very bad, and a lot of people are going to get killed here. I don't know who to talk to. You're the only guy I know, and I only know you because he got my book, The 2300 Days of Hell. Tell somebody, tell the prime minister, tell the IDF to get ready for something, and I don't know what it is. I sounded like an absolute idiot. And so he didn't know what to make of me. He dismissed me. I told another friend, and then I still wasn't satisfied. So I wrote a letter to the prime minister, Netanyahu. I told him there's about to be a surprise attack. And I wrote a letter to the chief of the rabbis on both of them on September 10th. And I wrote, there's about to be a major surprise attack. And you got to get ready. Okay, who the heck is this? Another wacko Christian believes he's Moses in Jerusalem, right? Yeah. And I'm even saying it to myself. Like, who are you? Are you absolutely out of your mind? You don't write to these people. Okay, so I'm watching and nothing happened. And I'm rechecking my dates. What is going on? Have I got this right? Do I really understand this? Or am I need to go back and get put in a loony bin? Because I know God's real, but am I really understanding his word? So I'm staking out this place. I'm in a hotel right beside it. I can watch over top of it. On October 6th, October 7th, I'm up early, and they're getting ready for a great big Catholic procession. I believe they're about to bring out the statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and they're about to set it in this shrine, and I'm trying to see how big is this thing? Is this the abomination that's going to be set up in the holy place? And all the bishops are coming out the door, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching, and I'm waiting for the statue to come out the door. And suddenly there's this rocket sirens going off. Okay, we've had these before, 5-10 minutes and it's over with. Just wait, it'll be over. And all the bishops and the whole parade, they go back into the building. Well, I'd say, okay, I'm going to go up there. I'm going to go and see this thing being set up. Because if nobody's here looking for this, how is God going to announce it to the world if nobody sees it? Am I the only one that sees it? I'm so stupid thinking that I'm the only one that's going to see this. Of course, he's going to make sure the whole world sees it. So I run up there, and all of a sudden, these rockets are exploding overhead. And I'm looking up. You can see the streaks going through the sky, and then you feel the concussion. And maybe I better go back inside. I go back inside, and my room, the curtains are there, the windows open, and the concussions from the explosions is moving my windows. Move my curtains. I didn't know a concussion did that. I'm from Canada. We don't have this sort of thing happening here. And okay, then they stop. I go running up the hill again, and they start coming out again. The sirens go off again. More explosions overhead. People are screaming at the Temple Mount. What's going on? And this rocket barrage goes on all day. Something's different. Something happened that day. They tried to come out of this church 3-4 times, and then they just gave up. I ran up the hill 3-4 times looking for this thing. It didn't happen. This is October 7th.
Right.
So I walk down, and I walk down to the Kidron Valley, and I get mad at God. I'm mad at him because I don't understand. I'm mad at him because they didn't set it up. I'm mad at him because I look like an idiot. This is absolutely insane. So I go and get something to eat and come back. The barrage is still going on. Then you start to hear about shrapnel falling and hitting people. And okay, it's time to stay inside. This is getting serious. Then there's gunshots in the area where I'm at. There's skirmishes breaking out. What is going on? So that night, people are texting me, asking me, are you okay? Are you okay? And then they showed me what happened and how far Hamas got into Israel. And how many people were killed. And that initial day, the fog of war has already taken place. And we hear about the Golani Brigade being devastated or wiped out. All these 18-year-old kids being killed because they're just kids. They're just kids. And I look at my kids and, I look at all these young people being wiped out. But we don't know what's going on. And Hamas is still running around in Israel, and they're still killing people. And where's the IDF? What's going on? Then we start hearing rumors about, okay, so they got all these rockets going off. Now Hezbollah's got even more rockets, more precision. They're about to start launching, and oh crap, I can't get out of here. The airport's shut down.
Right.
The Jordan border shut down. Egypt border. How am I going to get out of here? And you start thinking you're going into survival mode. What do I do? I don't need to be here. I don't need to be a casualty taking up resources in the hospital. I need to go. Obviously, that what I thought I understood was wrong. It's clearly it was wrong. I need to go home and lick my wounds. So that night, somebody sent me a video of the Nova Festival.
Right.
And then the Nova Festival, I started to watch it, and I started crying. At the very beginning of the Nova Festival, over top of the DJ tent, they had a giant inflatable statue of Buddha. And they're all dancing around the statue of Buddha. This is Shemini Atzeret. Shemini Atzeret is a holy day in Israel. And I got to say it, but I don't want to say it, but it needs to be said. The young people at Nova Festival, they weren't keeping Shemini Atzeret. They weren't keeping it holy. They were at a rave. They were taking advantage of the Sabbath and the time, the holy time, to have a rave. And this is no different than the golden calf incident where Israel is dancing around the golden calf. And that week, 3,000 people are killed. And like I said, I've seen the graves over there at Mount Sinai. I've seen the golden calf. I know it's real. This statue of Buddha, any statue, I was looking for the statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary to be set up. Any statue is an abomination. And that was set up, and they were dancing around it. And Jesus said in Matthew 24, when you see the abomination of Daniel, spoken of by Daniel, set up, to flee. And I'm thinking, where I'm looking at, there's no place to flee. It's a traffic jam nightmare. There's no place to flee here. Where they were killed there, that road with it, and I've been there. It's one road in, one road out, and on the backside is a Gaza fence. On the other side is a potato field and wide open farmland. There's a small wooded area there, but there's no place to flee there. And the Hamas came in both ways, and they trapped them all.
Right.
Anyway, 1,700 people got killed that day, brutally killed. And the statue of Buddha, once it deflated, nobody saw it anymore. Nobody thought. That's the very first thing I saw, which started me crying.
So you had that moment in time, and so here's this, and that's an anchor point.
That is exactly 1,290 days, Daniel 12:11, from the time that Netanyahu shut down Israel on March 25th.
So you got your prophetic date, which came true, just not the way you thought it was going to come through.
Not the way I thought it, but it gave me an anchor point. But there's another anchor point there in Daniel 12, verse 12. Happy are those that reach the 1335 day point. So right. What does that mean? It doesn't really tell you anything, but happy are they that reach the 1335. I thought it was lineal, so one, then the other would follow. But if we counted from the same time, 1335 from March 25th brings you to November 21st.
Right.
November 21st is when they made the agreement to release the first 80 hostages.
Right.
And they began to release them 2 days or 3 days after that. But that was the day they reached the agreement. Now we got two anchor points. Okay. Now I'm okay. Maybe I'm on to something now. Maybe I'm starting to get it. He's bringing my focus in more refined. Now we go to Daniel 8, because now we're talking about the time the daily is taken away. Daniel 8 also talks about the time that the daily is taken away. And the two witnesses are talking back for how long until you take vengeance for us. And he says 2,300 from the time the daily is taken away, 2,000. I'm really messing up that scripture. 2,300 evenings and mornings. The evenings and morning is the morning sacrifice and the evening sacrifice done at the temple every day. So that was done at 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. every day, the sacrificing of the lambs. That's the same time Yeshua was hung on the tree at 9 a.m. and killed at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. The mornings and evenings, 2,300 days. So 2,300 days from March 25th, 2020 brings you to July 12th, 2026. That's 1 year from now.
What happens on July 26th, 2020?
So here's the thing. It says in English, the word is, then the sanctuary will be vindicated. The word sanctuary can also be saints. So it can be, there's multiple meanings of the word sanctuary or saints will be vindicated. The word vindicated can also be cleansed. How can you cleanse the people? So people can take a mikvah after they've sinned or become unclean. They can take a mikvah, but you can't cleanse them from touching a dead body. There's only one way to cleanse you from touching a dead body. So I'm looking up, what does this mean by cleanse? Rabbi Rambam Maimonides, he said that this is referring to Malachi 3, verse 2. Malachi 3, verse 2 says that God will purify, or he's a refiner's fire, he will purify the people like fuller's soap and cleanse the Levites so that they can make an offering acceptable to God. There's only one way to cleanse the Levites to make an offering to God. And that one way is to sacrifice a red heifer and for them to be sprinkled with the ashes of a red heifer. Okay, that all sounded really good until, last week? I think it was August 11th? No, maybe last week sometime. They announced that the 4 red heifers are now disqualified. They practiced with a red heifer on July 8th. Then I think it was last week, they said that the 4 of them are now disqualified. They don't have a red heifer now to do the actual sacrifice. So did they just kill the real one and pretend it was not clean or not qualified? Have they got another one in reserve? I don't know. What I do know is that Malachi 3:2 says that he will cleanse and purify the people. Daniel 8, 12 or 14, the Levites need to be vindicated or cleansed. That has got to happen. Who's going to do it, according to Rambam, and I believe Rambam is right, is the Messiah himself.
And Jesus is coming on the 26th.
I know that's what it sounds like I'm saying. It sounds like I'm up. So now here's the pushback. Well, this guy's absolutely out of his tree because nobody knows the day or the hour. Jesus said that nobody knows the day or the hour.
Okay. We've talked about that on the podcast. It's like the elephant in the room is, when's he coming back? Like that's the, and so and I'm a big guy on specificity. That's what I love about Islam. We have the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and of course we have Hazrat Isa, peace be upon him, and Musa and all these other guys, peace upon them all. So we have these guys, and then we have the prophet that the last prophet that was here, and people who knew him. And then we have his writings and his sayings, the hadiths and the sunnah and all that stuff. And so I've had this conversations with my co-host about how we have a lot of specificity, right? And so the interesting component of this is like, you've figured it all out, and so at least a timeline, right? Up to this point. And so there's always these questions, but you seem to have clarity in interpreting the text and coupling it with the Jubilee calendar, and now you're heading towards the future, right? So you're just brought us all the way up to now, and then you're saying that we're in 2026. You've actually got a pinpoint and date of when there's this, and the significant. You've walked us through the significance of the red heifers. The red heifers is a prophetic ritual that has to happen in order to cleanse the people in the land
The
from
Levitical priesthood.
right. From what you're saying occurred after the I guess the conflict from October 7th, that is prophetic in itself. So I'm just trying to bring it down to like the street
Yeah.
level. So and red heifers are essentially red cows that are special, because it's written that these cows have a special ability to cleanse those that have gone through, that are sinned, if they're pure.
So Numbers 19 tells you the red heifer ceremony, and the red heifer cannot have more than one black hair on it. It's got to be totally red. Now they got certain qualifications.
Yeah, there's got to
they had 5 of them brought to Israel. All of them were perfect when they came. All of them were examined. 2 of them, I went to see them last year. 2 of them had then be disqualified because they had more than one black hair, and the other one had something wrong with his eye. So they used one of those 2 as a practice to see if the priesthood knows what to do, how to do this, to burn up the ashes. They did that in July 8th.
Okay.
And they did that in Shiloh, and it was a practice.
All right.
Okay, awesome. We're getting close. Now they've said the other 3 are now disqualified. Okay, what does that mean? That doesn't change what I'm saying about the prophecy. Is there going to be another red heifer, or have they misled us on purpose because of October 7th? Because the Alaska flood, according to Hamas themselves, was because of what they said was the red cows. So
right.
Anyway, so but again, where's the pushback here? Jesus said nobody can know. So, this guy's crazy. But that tells me that those people that say that don't know the Bible, don't know the Torah. There's one holy day that it's a Hebrewism, or a euphemism, is called the day and hour nobody knows. And that's called the Feast of Trumpets. Originally, so before Hillel created the calendar in 358 AD, they used to go by the crescent moon to begin the month and the barley to begin the year. And the crescent moon, because nobody could know if they had 2 witnesses, whether it was a 29-day or a 30-day month. So the Feast of Trumpets is the only feast day that lands or starts with the first day of the month. And you have to wait on 2 witnesses to sight the moon. Then those 2 witnesses have to come to Jerusalem, be interrogated by the high priest, and then the high priest has to come out and announce the day is hallowed. And until he announces the day is hallowed, nobody knows. But the moment he announces it, the shofars go off. They send riders from city to city. They light fires on top of the mountaintops, so all the way to Babylon. Then everybody knows the day is hallowed, and the Feast of Trumpets can now begin. Now you know when the fall holy days will be. That's the day and hour nobody knows. That's the day Jesus was born, not December 25th. That's the day he's coming back on. So now, we still got, how much time we got? We still got lots of time, because there's more here.
Well, we got time. I want to. We're at present. Well, hold on. I don't want to insult you, embarrass myself. But we're at the present. But we're at 2026 now. So there's 2026. There's going to be a red heifer. And
should I just leave everybody hanging here at 2026 and go away?
No, no. But I'm just trying to figure this out. So at the 2026, we have time to find the heifer.
Yes.
So it's providential, right? I know I sound goofy, but it's providential. Like it could just walk right into Israel from somewhere or some. But there's Christians are very passionate about trying to like egg things on, right? So who's bringing the red heifers over? Is that?
I think there's a group called B'nai Israel. We also talked to them at the NRB this past March, but it could come from anywhere. You're right. It doesn't have to be from one particular group. It just must be one that's got all red hair, never been yoked, doesn't have his ear pierced with a tag in it. It's got to be unblemished in every way.
Where does it have to be slaughtered? Where?
Well, they say it's got to be slaughtered on Jerusalem, on the Mount of Olives.
Okay.
But some people are also saying it could be done in Shiloh. So, like, again, I believe it's got to be done at a very specific spot on the Mount of Olives. So, but that's just
But,
my interpretation.
but how's it easy? Jesus has got to be there to do it.
That's Malachi 3 too. That's what that's telling you. The Messiah is going to be the one to do it. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But let's answer this question. So now we know it's the Feast of Trumpets. Christians are always talking about the thief in the night, the thief in the night. Ooh, the thief in the night. But they, Revelation 2, don't get caught by the thief. Don't let your shame be exposed. That's running home naked. So what happens is the thief in the night comes in on the Feast of Trumpets. He sneaks into the temple, the high priest. And the other priests are supposed to be making sure that the daily sacrifices are all burnt up and they can't be asleep on the job. Watching a fire, in front of a fire all by yourself, you tend to fall asleep. So the thief in the night is the high priest. He sneaks in. If he finds you sleeping, he will take some coals from the fire and put them on your robes. And when your robes catch fire, you wake up, you have to rip off your robes, and then you're naked and running home naked. So that's, this is Revelation talk right there. Don't get caught so you run home naked. Watch out because I come as a thief in the night. This is what it's talking about. That is the Feast of Trumpets. So,
Right.
So just let's hold that. I got to jump to another thought. Okay. It says in Luke, what is it? Luke 17, 26 to 30. Luke 17, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the last days. They were eating and drinking and giving in marriage. Okay. You're a healthy looking young man. You look like you ate today and you drank today. Does that make you evil? No. You got married, your kids got married. Is it evil to getting married? No. As it was in the days of Noah, they were eating and drinking, getting married. So shall it be in the last days. What does that mean? As it was in the days of Lot, they were eating and drinking and getting married and doing business. So shall it be in the last days. What does that mean? Until you do the Jubilee cycles, all that means is it's going to be a surprise. You just don't know when it's going to happen. That's where, every day could be the day. You got to be ready. It could be today. It could be the day that, no, it's not going to be. God's prophecies happen according to his holy days at very specific times all the time. Jesus was killed according to Passover. The 10 Commandments were given on Shavuot. The Holy Spirit was given on Shavuot. The Exodus from Egypt on Passover, the first day of unleavened bread. The crossing of the Red Sea on the seventh day of unleavened. All these major events happen according to the holy days. So the coming back at the end of this age happened according to the fall holy days. Understanding that, I took the 8th day Shemini Atzeret. It has a very similar teaching to the Jubilee year. And I just did a day for a year on this final Jubilee. And I made the 8th day like the Jubilee year. And then I counted back to the first holy day of Sukkot. And that ended up to be 2038. 5 days or 5 years before that is the Day of Atonement. And that brings me to the year 2033. Now that represents the final day of judgment when Satan's going to be locked away. That's what the Day of Atonement represents. 10 days before that, or 10 years before that, brings you to 2024. That represents the Feast of Trumpets. The Feast of Trumpets represents the thief in the night. That represents the day he's coming back. That represents the day he was born. Okay, so I've really gone over this crazy pill here, the crazy edge here, because there's no way. But Peter, the Apostle Peter says, in the last days, or, the first destruction of the world was by flood. The last one could be by fire. Look around the world right now. If we don't have flash floods, we have wildfires devouring the southern Europe, Western Canada, Western United States. Whole cities are being destroyed. Northern Canada, we have all kinds of cities being evacuated for wildfires. We have wildfires in the East Coast. I think you just had wildfires in New Jersey.
Right.
Is that right? Okay.
Okay.
Why? This is so weird. Wildfires in the east. But Peter says it's going to be by fire. The thief in the night, he sets the robes of the priests afire if they're falling asleep. Christianity, I'll dare say Islam, and I don't know Islam. Christians, Islams, and Jews, I would say they're all asleep. They don't have any clue as to how close we are to the end of this age. Everyone says we're at the end of it, but we don't know exactly where. But I'm telling you, we're in the final 10 days of awe, 10 years of judgment, and that's from 24 to 2033. Now, why do I say that? Because as it was in the days of Noah, when you compare the Jubilee cycle of Noah, Noah's flood took place in the 4th year of the 6th sabbatical cycle. Okay. Then you look at Lot, because you've done the chronology. The Sodom and Gomorrah is destroyed in the 3rd year of the 6th sabbatical cycle. So there's the 3rd and 4th year. Now, when I did the holy days here, the Day of Atonement ends up being the 3rd year of the 6th sabbatical cycle. Now, Lot was at Passover of the 3rd year. Noah was at Passover, the 2nd Passover of the 4th year.
Right.
And in between those two is the Day of Atonement in the 3rd year, which is 2033. Now I have 2 more Jubilee cycles that match this end time cycle. I have a pattern to go off of. But not only that, I looked at Joseph's 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. They did not start at the beginning of a sabbatical cycle and end at a sabbatical cycle, so I thought I had that information wrong. Then a friend of mine said, go back and look at it. You've got it right. Compare it to ours today. And I go back and look at it. 7 years of plenty start in 2020 and end in 2026. The 7 years of famine start in 2026 or 7 and end in 2033. It's an exact match for our time period. The curses of Leviticus 26 are also curses that are laid out according to sabbatical cycles or Shemitah cycles. And the 4th curse, or the 5th curse, is a curse of famine. Again, the cycle that we're in now. Each of these cycles that I've been talking about, from 2005, and I've stopped really talking about them here a couple of years ago because it's just in the news all the time. Each cycle has a curse that goes with it and is compounded onto the next cycle.
Right.
And so I've been warning people about each cycle, what's going to happen during that time, and the news is going to be dominated by those events. So again, we've been right about each of the cycles that I've been doing this. You're going to ask something.
Well, this isn't great news.
It's not great news.
Not
if you got an RSP you're waiting to collect in 10 years time. No,
I'm just saying, it doesn't sound great. And the reality, if Jesus comes next year, so hold on, I'm just trying to catalyze this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because the second temple doesn't the second temple have to be there, or the third temple doesn't have to be rebuilt and then destroyed again, or no?
Okay, well, again, so
doesn't that business have to before Jesus comes?
All you need is to be able to do sacrifices. They've already got an altar prepared. They've already got the stones to do it. So all you need to be able to do is put up an altar to do the sacrifice. Do you need a temple? I don't think you need a temple, but I also think, I think the Mount of Olives in this particular spot is the original altar site outside the city. So they've already got the altar.
Okay.
Which is the mountain itself.
Right. So and build a what's it called? An altar, and
build an altar
with original stones, and then you bring the red heifer. Can't have a lot of. It has to be as a meet a criteria, and then Jesus comes, slaughters it, but then you have like this whole Antichrist business.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
I'm just making sure. I know it's kind of, but you got the end. Now, are you what's it called? What's it called when all the nerds get brought to heaven? What's it called?
The rapture?
Rapture. Are you a rapture person?
The nerd rapture. Is that what you just called it? The nerd
No, I just said
rapture?
nerds. I'm kind of excited about that because
Okay, so
then
there is
all the nerds go, and then you actually have everyone here with Hazadisa that are ready to fight the forces of evil, which is fun. That to me is like all the
okay.
good two shoes are gone.
So there's a rapture teaching.
Right.
Okay.
I'm just asking, are you in alignment with that or no?
The answer is yes and no, because there's everything's got some of the elements, but then they've got it construed with their theology. And I'm a scripture, what do you call it? A script,
Sola Scriptura.
sola scriptura.
Right.
I believe in just reading what the scriptures say. I don't want to hear the church theology because there's 10,000 different churches, 10,000. I don't got time for all that.
This is very exciting. So you're telling, yeah. So all right. So Jesus, I'm just making sure Jesus is coming 2026. They don't need to rebuild the temple.
Well, hang on, but there's more than you can't just say Jesus coming 2026. What I'm indicating is he's already here in 2024 and the world is on fire. He's going to appear to people somehow. I don't know. Is that going to be a lightning come down and burn up the red heifer? Is that going to be it in 2026? Is something, I don't know exactly what it is, but I believe it involves him in 2026 somehow.
Right.
But, so here's the other thing, here's the pushback. It says, what is it, Matthew? Yeah, Matthew 24. He's going to come as lightning, and everyone's going to see him as lightning coming out of the east, and everyone's going to see him. Well, nobody's seen him. Well, of course, you don't see the thief in the night.
Right.
But hang on. He's going to touch down on the Mount of Olives, but that's a different event. So you're asking, are we going to be raptured? The holy day, the Leviticus 23, tell you what day you will be raised up. Right. And so when you ask me, yes, I believe in the rapture, but I don't believe in the rapture as being taught by the Christian churches. I believe in the resurrection of the saints, which takes place according to the holy days. Now, most people believe that know a little bit about the holy days, that's the Feast of Trumpets. I don't believe that. The Feast of Trumpets is a time of judgment. It's a time of war. It's a time of, oh crap, the crap's about to hit the fan. Am I going to be okay? Do I know my Messiah? Because the 5 virgins are told, I never knew you. So how do you get to know God? How do you get to know if he knows you? You got to know everything about him. You got to be intimate with him. You know, my wife knows about the mole or the hair that's growing on the mole in my shoulder that I never see. But she knows me. She knows what buttons to push. She knows what I like and what I don't like. Can you say that about God? Do you know him? So are you going to be raptured? Yes, but not the way you think you are. Post-trib, mid-trib, pre-trib. Come on, let's look at the scriptures. It's at the end of the tribulation that the 144,000 and the innumerable multitude are changed. Right. In the twinkling of an eye. At the end of the, well, when is that? I'm saying that's 2033. So which holy day is it? The holy day, if you go back to Passover, during the days of unleavened bread, there's a day called Wave Sheaf Day. And on Wave Sheaf Day, the first fruits of barley are way before the temple or before the altar. The first fruits. When Jesus came out of the grave at the end of the Sabbath, after 3 days and 3 nights in the grave, Matthew 27, verse 50, a whole bunch of saints came out of the grave with him at the same time. And even I believe, the thief on the tree came back to life at that time, because inside one of the graves, inside the grave or the tomb, Mark says, was this young man clothed in white. I believe that was a thief on the tree, but we're not given his name. Right. That took place on Wave Sheaf Day. That was the barley offering. The only other wave offering is the one that takes place at Shavuot, at Pentecost Sunday. That's the wheat offering. That wheat is what Jesus said, we got to become the wheat. And that's the second harvest. So that wheat offering is the one that we want to be a part of. And that takes place at the end in 2033, at the end of the Great Tribulation, which means that if I'm right and Satan's going to be locked away in 2033, you count back 3.5 years for the tribulation, that starts in 2030.
Right.
That means that starts with the two witnesses being killed at Passover in 2030, which means that they start their work 3.5 years before that, which is again the fall of 2026.
Okay. And then, but then the cycle ends in 2045.
The Jubilee cycle ends.
So what's happening between 33 and 45?
Okay, so there's all the dead got to be picked up all around the world and cleaned up and put away.
Right.
There's the restoration of the temple itself that's got to be done. So again, now so I got another controversial thing here. The Jews are going to be excited, but the Christians are going to be upset because the one that's going to be brought back to life is King David.
Okay.
Paul said that King David is dead and still with us to this day. He hasn't been brought back to life. He wasn't part of those people that came up with Jesus at that time. He's being brought back to life here because it says in Micah that God is going to lead David and David's going to lead Israel back to Jerusalem from the land of Moab. So somehow he's got to be brought back to life. And that takes place, there's not multiple resurrections taking place every other day here. There's going to be one at Shavuot at the end of the Great Tribulation. So we got a number of things pointing to 2026. The 2300 days after Daniel 8:12 or 8:14, July 12th, 2026. Then we got the two witnesses starting later that in the fall at the holy days. But there's got to be some other things taking place because there's another number of other scriptures that I'm seeing that I'm still trying to wrestle with. So we've just written another book called A Lion Rises Up, The Coming of Apollyon. I hope to have it out here by the end of September. But there's a lot of things in it that I'm still wrestling with trying to understand. And I'm not trying to be a prophet. I'm not trying to say, Joe Dumond says this directly thing from God. I'm just saying I'm a guy reading my Bible, understanding these Jubilee cycles, understanding this pattern, being confirmed by these different events in history, modern day history, and just applying them to try and understand.
Right. I guess you figured it out. I mean, so I mean, like so as a Muslim, we believe in the end of days. We believe in that Hazrat Isa is going to come back with the Mahdi, and so I'm not, and it was funny. I was chatting with a friend of mine, and I was just saying, I was going to chat with you, and he's like, what are you going to say? And I go, I'm not going to dispute anything. I mean, great. That's what we're all here for, at the end, but it's not going to be fun. I was joking around with the rapture, but if all the nerds leave, then it's like us shoulder to shoulder with Hazrat Isa fighting against the force of evil, which I like, and all the goody two shoes are gone. You know what I mean? So that's those guys aren't going to be great in the battle.
I got to steal that from the rapture nerds. I like that.
Yeah,
use that.
And so I was like, so I said, we were chatting back. I go, but I said, so if it's and I was surprised because I was looking at some of your stuff. So it's 2026 things happen, and then to 2030, like you said, it's not going to be great. It's not going to be a fun time. No. And then you've got different plagues that are coming. So I guess I'm not going to. I guess the biggest question everybody is that there must be a lot of pushback on this with you because everybody knows. I don't know any Christian.
Everybody knows what.
Well, I'm saying that there's different Christian communities that know or at least speculate that their calendar or their sort of prophetic sort of vision of the future is correct, and some of it's a question mark, but others have an idea of where we're heading and what the timeline is. So it must be difficult to be swimming in these waters with the Christian.
Most Christians, it's taboo to set a date.
Right.
It's because it goes against what Jesus said. Nobody knows the day or the hour, but they don't understand what he was talking about. It's the Feast of Trumpets. So I understand that. And then the difficulty is trying to get them to understand what they don't understand, trying to get them to step outside their theological box and look at the scriptures, scripture only, and just read it without theology fogging up your brain and telling you what it doesn't mean. Just read it for what it says. You know, like, again, Christians, I love them, but they do throw up a lot of roadblocks because of their theology. They have to justify their sins that they keep. And again, in order to do that, you got to dismiss parts of the scripture. And I can't do that. And that's, again, I get in trouble doing this. So I make a I make a whole lot of friends every time I open my mouth.
Well,
So
it must be tough. Carrying the burden. Like I said, I think I explained to you guys in Ishmaeli, we're like, Islam after hours. So we are sort of, we deal with a lot of ritual and mysticism. We do a lot of strange things that are just normal to us, but everybody thinks that they're soothsaying and all kinds of stuff. We don't do any of that. And so, but we deal with the sort of fundamentals. We pray, we, serve something larger than ourselves. We try to make the world a better place, that sort of thing. But, but it must be difficult to know, or to have confidence in something like this with a calendar and knowing of events and so forth, particularly at such a spiritual and grand level. It must be very burdensome on you.
if you look at my shoulders, they're slouchy forward all the time. I used to be a 6-pack guy. Now they're slunched forward, and I got a beer keg instead. But so again, what did Yeshua say? Yeshua said, before he comes, before the end, that he would send his Elijah, his 2 witnesses. And what would they be doing? They're going to be restoring all things. Okay, so nobody's looking for those 2 guys. Who are they? What are they restoring? What has to be restored? It's got to be something that was originally there. So what was originally there? The Sabbath was there, the holy days according to the crescent moon, and according to the year according to the barley. That was what Yeshua kept. That was long before Islam. That was long before the Hillel calendar. That was long before the Mishnah.
Right.
That was from the time of Moses up until the destruction of the temple, even up until the Mishnah was written in 180. It was the crescent moon and the barley, and the Sabbath was from sunset to sunset. The holy days need to be restored. The worshiping God needs to be restored. You just look in our society. Look at New York. Look at any place in the world. Nobody's worshiping God. It's gone crazy. Like there are places that I used to want to go that I'm afraid to go to now. It's just, you can't. There's no morality in the world. It's gone. You watch TV and it's gone off the rails. It's gone off the rails a long time ago, but it's just so obvious now. It used to be discreet. Now it's very obvious. The restoration of all things has to be restored. These things got to be restored. The Jubilee years, the sabbatical years have to be restored. I've been keeping the sabbatical year since I first learned about it. I started learning about this in 2005. So I kept my first sabbatical year in 2009. I didn't plant anything that year. I had a large garden. I let the land, my property go fallow. And I tried to obey it as best I could. We have got to have more people restoring all things. Now, if you're Jewish and you think that you are restoring things by keeping the Hillel calendar, you haven't restored anything. You're keeping the same traditions that have caused you troubles for 2,000 years. You need to go back to keeping, then keep the barley to start the year. There's nobody looking for the barley. I go to Israel every year to look for the barley. Nobody keeping the crescent moon. I wait for the crescent moon report from Israel to begin my month. Yeah, but we can't do that. We're in the diaspora. But yes, you can. You have TV, you have internet, you got phones, you have people in Jerusalem or in Israel that can do this right now. Even the Sanhedrin that's there knows that the crescent moon and the barley begin the year. They've said as much. They've even got people practicing sighting the moon right now. Why don't we go back to doing that? Well, because that's going to upset a lot of Jews on the Hillel calendar. You're going to upset the Jews, or you want to upset God? Which do you care more about? Again, we have to restore these things, and it doesn't have to be 100% restored. We just need people that have restored it, and that could be a handful, that could be 100, it could be 1,000, it could be 10. I don't know what it is, but those things have to be restored. And as far as I understand, the Jubilee years have now been restored. We know when they are. The sabbatical years have now been restored. I've gone to Jerusalem. We've read the entire law on the first day of Sukkot, as told, as we are commanded to do at the Shemitah year. We've had up to 20 people doing it with us. People think we're nuts. We're doing it down at the Gihon Spring. That's as close as we can get to the original temple. And we're doing it there. So all these things must be restored. Then he's going to come. Now, you're right. There's a lot of bad stuff about to happen in here. And there's going to be people fighting on both sides. There's this beast power that's already taken place. People are looking for it, watching for it, and they're not seeing it. But there's a lot of bad stuff about to happen. And, you know, the thing with 2024 to 2030, so, you know, there's the first 7 seals. Those things have already taken place. Then there's the next 7 trumpets. I believe those 7 trumpets are now taking place. Then there's the final 7 vials or bowls, Revelation. That takes place in the last 3.5 years of the tribulation. My message is, don't believe me. Don't believe me. Take my information and prove it, or prove it false. But if you prove it true, then it's now your information. And that burden that you see on my shoulders is now on yours. Because everyone that you know doesn't know this, that you've just proven it. Now, I've got 20 years of research into this now. There's a lot of information. It's a huge subject. Like my presentation, when I present this fully, is about 40 hours. We did it at the NRB in 2.5 hours. That was going quick. We do it down there. The people coming by in 15 minutes. That's just, right? Do these podcasts. Again, trying to get people up to speed, to get them to understand before you can understand. Maybe this guy isn't really a nutcase. Maybe he does have some numbers that are lining up here. Maybe we should pay attention. But I challenge you to go prove it. I don't care what faith you are. Muslim, Christian, evangelical, Jew, I don't care. Hindu, go and prove this. Because whatever religion you belong to, they're all going to be taken care of by 2033. There will no longer be 15,000, or what is, Hindus got 3 million gods. There's no longer going to be all these different gods, all these different religions. There's going to be one after 2033. One. If you're not,
no, if I'm not what? What'd you say?
No, if you're not on the right page, you won't be there, is what I was going to say. What were you going to say?
No, I appreciate, first of all, I appreciate you, number one, sharing all this stuff with me. It's one of those things where we get a lot of questions about, end of days. And so, I was trying to really kind of figure out, well, all right, what does that, what does that mean? Who's really thought about this? Because the answer is always like, nobody knows. Right. So, but I think that the idea is that you kind of gave us the crash course in your studies and the dividends of 20 years of looking at this. And my co-host, I think we mentioned before we started that, he's a biblical scholar, and so I think it'd be a fun conversation to follow up with some of with specificity. What are the elements and how they align with? I think the two of you would have a very, very unique conversation that would be a nice complement to this. So we'll have to ask you back if that's okay.
Awesome. That would be awesome. Let me say one other thing here, John.
Sure.
We're in the year 2025 right now with this recording. And that's 19 years until 2044.
Right.
If I'm wrong, let's say everything I'm saying is wrong about the end times. I don't know anything. The Jubilee cycles, you cannot prove wrong. You will confirm the 2044 is the end of this Jubilee year. Everyone knows we're near the end of the 6th millennial day. Everyone knows we're near the end. They just don't know how close. So no matter whether I'm right or wrong is irrelevant. Your theology, whether it's Islamic, Jewish, or Christian, whatever theology you subscribe to about the end of days, has got to fit in between 2025 and 2044. That's how much time. So somewhere in that time period. Now, if you've got a plan for your kid's university and you're storing money away for that, I'm sorry to disappoint you. You got to have this figured out by 2044. And I'm saying it's not 2044. You got to have it figured out not by 2033, not even by 2030. You need to have it figured out by this time next year.
Because this is it's all going to come to pass. So
yeah. So in 2027, I'm expecting the swarm of locusts that's coming out of the pit. I'm expecting Apollyon in 2028, or Apollyon in the swarm. So 2028 to 26, there's some time in there. They could be merged together. I'm expecting it all to happen then.
Okay.
That's when, you guys are all gonna be marching against him. Awesome. But this is the time period we're in.
Right.
So if nothing happens in 2026 and 2027 rolls around, have me back on. Because obviously I'll be wrong. I'll have to eat a lot of crow then. But if something does happen, I don't think you'll be able to have me on.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll be very busy.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I'm saying,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad that we had you on before. You know what I mean? Like, I'm glad I caught you. And I'm not making light of your studies or your conclusions or anything. I just because I never really think of the end of days. It's not something that's in my calculus. Because I'm always very my sort of strategic interests are different, and then I'm always dealing with the tactical. But I think that this forum of being able to discuss this openly is just really interesting, and like I think that a more theological conversation with Elliot might be really fun for you and for our listeners.
You've been great. I want to thank you for hosting me and giving me this platform to be able to express this, even though we are of different faiths.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, and
that is awesome.
Yeah, no, like I said, I first of all, Christians are people of the book. A lot of people don't understand that Muslims, have that in their theology. It's in the Quran, that says, that you got to respect people of the book. All those stuff about the infidel and everything else are all stories and about specific instances where Muslims are defending themselves and giving sort of speeches. But yeah, I find it completely fascinating. I mean, just to give you an example of like how things are a little bit, you were talking about the moon and cycles and everything else. So in Islam, we have two moons. I'll leave you kind of with this. We have two moons. So there's the Sunni moon and there's the Shia moon. So, right. When it comes to like Ramadan, right? So everybody goes Ramadan and sun up to sundown. The Sunnis are really great because it's sun up if you can see it, if you can sight it, sun up, if you can sight it, sundown, right? But Shia, it has to be declared. So if you're a Shia and you follow, an Ayatollah like Sistani or Shirazi or one of those guys, they have to declare that it's night. So the sun could be down, and it could visually be night, but then it has to be declared, and you have to wait. So so that's why we have two moons, and there's a lot of just in that moment where if it's in the summer, if Ramadan is in the summer and you're going to like 9 o'clock, when the sun goes down, you want to eat, you want to break the fast.
Yeah.
You want to do rosa, you want to have iftar, and we'll sit there and we'll wait until it's declared. And so sometimes that could be a long minute or 3 minutes or 4 minutes, because you've been waiting the whole time. So it's like we have the same similar things when it comes to timing, because we are on a different calendar as well. And so and a lot of
but you also you also use the crescent moon to begin the month,
Yes, yes, we do.
right? So Jews used to do that.
Right,
Christians have never done it, but that's what we used to do uh, before the temple was destroyed. So
right,
you used to do it, we do it. That's what we all have to get back to doing.
right. And so we I mean I have a controversial, but my controversial views, as I always talk about how when I've written articles about this and how when Jerusalem was sacked, when Israel was sacked by the Romans, the diaspora, the Jewish Jesus movement, like the ones that are around James, became the diaspora in the Arabian Peninsula, and that became proto-Islam. So that's my assertion. And so
That would
we
be controversial, yes.
so that's proto-Islam, and then and the idea that we follow a lot of the same holidays, and it's really we're really an appendage, a sect of Judaism. So I'll send you an article or two on that. So that's one of my sort of scholarly pieces. It's very
What happened? Hello, hello.